In this video, we're going to look at calculating the IRR, or the internal rate of return of a project. Here's our example. We've got a project costing £10,000 upfront, but which generates additional cash flows of £5,000 after 1 year, £4,000 after 2 years, and £3,000 after 3 years. Now, the IRR is the discount rate that makes our NPV equal to 0. So we need to find discount rate that makes NPV equal to 0. NPV is the net present value. It's the present value of all the cash flows of the project. So let's write down how we would calculate the NPV of this project. Well, the NPV, it's the negative of the initial cost, so it's minus 10,000, and it's plus our 1 year cash flow, that's 5,000, divided by 1 plus R, where R is our discount rate, and it's plus 4,000 divided by 1 plus R squared, which is the present value of our cash flow in year 2, and it's plus 3,000 divided by 1 plus R cubed, the present value of the cash flow in year 3. Okay, now to find the IRR, we need to find the value of R that makes this NPV equal to 0. There's a couple of different ways to do this. The first way is trial and error. So let's just have a look at this method one. So I say trial and improvement. So all we're going to do is we're going to try different values of R and in our NPV formula and find the one that gets the NPV to be closest to 0. So let's have a little table. Here's our values of R and here's our NPV. So let's just start with 10% as our rate. So R is 10% is 0.1. If we plug 0.1 into the NPV formula, I've already done this advance, I think we get an NPV of £105.20. That's just a 105.2. I only rounded to one decimal place. 105.2. Okay. So because this NPV is positive, that means the discount rate is going to be higher than 0.1. So let's try 0.15. If I try 0.15, I get negative 655.1 as my discount rate. So because this is negative, the NPV is going to be less than 0. The IRR is going to be less than 0.15. We'll try something closer to 0.1, so let's try 0.12. We get minus 211.6. If we try 0.11, we get minus 55. And so we realize that the IRR is going to be between 0.1 and 0.11, which is, so 0.1 is less than the IRR, which is less than 0.11. If we want to work out exactly to the nearest 1%, if we try an intermediate value, so 0.105, we get an NPV of 24, which is a positive value. So because the NPV for 0.105 is positive, that means IRR is more than 0.105. So that means the IRR is 0.11 or 11% to the nearest 1%. Okay, so that's our trial and improvement method. The second method is an approximation method. So let's have a look at that. It's a formula, approximation and this formula, I'll copy in this formula. It looks a bit like this. So IRR is this formula, and in order to use this formula, we have to calculate the IRR, the NPV for two different values of R. So let's use the values let's use the two that we used before. So we try R is 0.1 and R is 0.15. And all we do is we plug these R's and R NPVs into a formula. So IRR is equal to RA, which is our lower discount rate, 0.1, plus the NPV at the lower rate, that's 105.2, divided by the NPV at the lower rate, 105.2, minus the NPV at the higher rate, that's minus 655.1, then multiplied by our higher discount rate, 0.15, minus our lower discount rate, 0.1. You just plug these numbers into this formula. In this case, I think you get 0.107, which is exactly the same, 11% to the nearest percent. So instead of the same answer, we get 11% to the nearest percent. So there are two ways to calculate the IRR of a project.